We are unbelievably fortunate here in the UK to have such a large number of heritage railways and so many steam locomotives still operating. There's a line in relatively easy reach for the majority of the population. But how did that come to be? Well, here's the story. Creaking and groaning under the strain of being worked into the ground during World War II, the British railway system was nationalised in 1948. British Railways inherited a vast collection of different types of engine, and thus, under the stewardship of Robert Riddles, efforts were made to standardise them, with the construction of the new standard designs commencing in 1951. Many, however, were to have very short working lives. British Rail's Modernisation plan was published in 1954, the full impact and merits or otherwise of which are still long debated. But the area of the plan that's of most relevance to this short film was the demand that steam locomotives be very quickly replaced by diesel and eventually electric traction. Moving on into the 1960s, with money still being lost hand over fist, the now infamous Richard Beeching was appointed head of British Railways with instructions to stem the spiralling losses. His report, The Reshaping of British Railways, which is commonly known as the Beeching Report, concluded that much of the rail network should be closed down. This led to over 5,000 miles of track and over 2,000 stations being lost. What had been unintentionally created were the perfect conditions for groups of railway enthusiasts to dream of taking on these closed lines and operating them, with the steam locomotives currently being disposed of in their hundreds. Which is exactly what began to happen. Through adversity, red tape, hurdles and bureaucracy, numerous stretches of line and stations were purchased through their fundraising efforts, and the railway preservation movement was born. But all this took time, and with the final steam services on British Railways taking place in 1968, locomotives were fast being cut up for scrap. Some of the earlier formed groups had been able to fundraise in time to purchase a locomotive directly from British Railways. 43106 on the Severn Valley Railway being an example of this. It was able to travel to Kidderminster under its own steam just a few days before steam movements were stopped. Many smaller locomotives, such as this pannier, had been sold to collieries or industrial railways to see out their final days, and they could be purchased from there. Others were specially preserved as part of the national collection, museum pieces that in future years, in some cases, could be brought back to steam. But sadly, by the time many preservation groups had the funds, these options had become very limited. Enter the man most beloved by steam enthusiasts. Dai Woodham owned one of the companies tasked with cutting up the redundant engines. Based in the town of Barry, in South Wales, Woodham purchased several hundred locomotives for processing at his yard. However, at this time, British Rail were also disposing of many thousands of goods wagons which were far easier to break up than a locomotive. And, with a seemingly never-ending supply of wagons arriving at his yard, Woodham's concentrated on the job of scrapping them, leaving the locomotives for another time. Now, this huge stockpile of slowly decaying engines soon attracted the attention of the railway preservationists, and, before long, they began to make contact with Woodham's to inquire about the possibility of purchasing the engines for use on their lines. And this is where Dai Woodham's came into his own and claimed his place in railway history, refusing to take advantage and make a profit out of what he called salt of the earth people. he agreed to the sales and merely charged the groups the scrap value of their chosen locomotive. In addition, once a sale had been agreed, Woodham's was happy for the locomotive to remain free of charge in his yard, sometimes for many years, until the group had raised enough funds to complete the purchase. Now, not every single loco was saved from Barry Scrapyard, but well over 200 of the engines that survive today passed through Woodham's yard. So, there we have it. At around the same time, several things happened that allowed railway preservation as we know it to take place. The Modernisation plan saw steam locomotives being withdrawn and scrapped in large numbers. Beeching's cuts meant that there were lines that railway preservations could take over and use. And, of course, the fact that such a large number of locomotives could be bought and restored from Barry Scrapyard. And that's why, through pure good fortune, the UK has more preserved railways than anywhere else. A few final things before I say goodbye. Have you ever noticed that there are lots of preserved Great Western engines but comparatively few LNER? Well, that's down to the fact that Dai Woodham's yard was slap bang in the middle of Great Western territory. Engines were, by and large, disposed of in the general area in which they worked. Now, the restoration of the saved Barry engines is still ongoing. Have you ever wanted to own an engine? Well, you can. A part of one, at least. 76077 is a standard 4MT loco currently being restored for use on the Gloucestershire-Warwickshire Steam Railway. And you can get involved by buying shares in the engine at a bargainous £1 each. I'll put the website link in the video description. And finally, have you ever looked at this picture and felt your heart break? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that she was not allowed to die. She's got a nice, cosy home on the Great Central Railway. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this short film. Take care, see you soon. Don't forget to get out there support our railways. Bye-bye.